The landscape of COVID-19 vaccination is set to change in a notable way. The Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, has announced plans to refine its strategy for future COVID-19 shots. The agency is signaling a move towards a more targeted approach. This new direction means that upcoming updated versions of the COVID-19 vaccine will primarily be intended for specific groups within the population. These groups are identified as individuals aged 65 and older and those who have underlying high-risk medical conditions. This represents a deliberate effort to focus protection on those who are statistically more vulnerable to severe outcomes from the virus, ensuring they have continued access. This planned restriction applies to all future iterations and updated formulations of the COVID-19 vaccine. It is not a change affecting current vaccine stock or immediate recommendations, but rather a forward-looking policy for the next waves of vaccine development and deployment. The definition of high-risk medical conditions generally encompasses a range of health issues that can compromise an individual's immune system or make them more susceptible to severe illness from a respiratory infection like COVID-19. This often includes conditions such as chronic lung disease, significant heart conditions, diabetes, obesity, and immunocompromised states due to illness or medication, though specific definitions are often refined by public health bodies. Under this proposed new framework, it is estimated that approximately 1/3 of the United States population would remain eligible for these updated COVID-19 vaccines. This figure underscores the shift from a broad, population-wide vaccination campaign to a more focused public health intervention. The FDA's decision aims to balance the benefits of vaccination with evolving understanding of the virus, vaccine efficacy over time, and the risk profiles of different demographic groups. The agency is carefully considering how to best utilize vaccines as the pandemic transitions into a different phase, where the virus continues to circulate, but its overall impact has changed due to widespread immunity and viral evolution. The core idea behind this new plan is to provide an additional layer of defense for those who continue to face the most significant threats from COVID-19. As the virus mutates and new variants emerge, updated vaccines are developed to better match these circulating strains. The FDA's intention is to ensure that these advanced vaccines are directed towards the segments of the population where they can make the most substantial difference in preventing severe disease, hospitalization, and death. This considered approach reflects ongoing scientific assessment and a commitment to adapting public health strategies as new information and circumstances arise, ensuring the most vulnerable are prioritized for enhanced protection. This new plan from the FDA marks a considerable departure from the previous recommendations concerning COVID-19 vaccinations. In the earlier phases of the pandemic and through subsequent updates, the guidance was much broader. Updated COVID-19 shots were generally recommended for almost everyone aged 6 months and older, typically advised before each winter season when respiratory viruses tend to circulate more actively. This widespread recommendation aimed to boost immunity across the entire population, reduce transmission, and lessen the overall burden of the disease on the healthcare system. The goal was to build a strong collective defense against a novel and often severe virus. The shift towards a more targeted approach for individuals over 65 or those with high-risk conditions reflects an evolving understanding of the COVID-19 landscape. The official public health emergency declaration for COVID-19 has ended, signaling a transition in how the virus is managed. While COVID-19 remains a public health concern, it is now being approached more like other endemic respiratory illnesses. This change acknowledges that the immediate crisis phase has passed, and strategies need to adapt to a longer-term coexistence with the virus. The focus is moving from emergency response to sustainable management and protection of the most vulnerable groups within the population. This change in policy is significant because it recalibrates who is actively encouraged to seek out the latest COVID-19 boosters. Previously, the message was one of broad collective benefit and individual protection for all. Now, the emphasis is more specifically on protecting those at heightened personal risk of severe outcomes. This doesn't necessarily mean that younger, healthier individuals cannot get vaccinated, but the primary recommendation and public health push will be directed towards the older and high-risk demographics. It's a nuanced adjustment based on accumulated data regarding vaccine effectiveness, duration of immunity, and the changing nature of the virus itself. The move towards a more selective vaccination strategy also reflects a period of assessment regarding the virus's current impact. With a large portion of the population having some level of immunity, either from vaccination, prior infection, or both, the risk calculus has changed for many younger and healthier individuals. The initial urgency to vaccinate broadly was driven by a novel pathogen with devastating potential. Now, with established immunity and less virulent dominant strains, the strategy is being refined to provide the most benefit where it is most critically needed, aligning resources and recommendations with the current state of the pandemic and our understanding of the disease. Support for this more focused FDA rule comes from various health experts who have been analyzing the evolving data on COVID-19 and vaccine efficacy. Prominent voices such as Dr. Martin Makary from Johns Hopkins University and Dr. Vinay Prasad from the University of California, San Francisco, have argued that for healthy individuals, especially younger people, the benefits of receiving annual COVID-19 boosters might not outweigh potential, albeit rare, risks. They suggest that the risk-benefit analysis changes as the virus becomes less severe for those with robust immune systems and as population immunity grows. Their perspective is that a more tailored approach is scientifically sound. A key component of the FDA's new stance is its requirement for vaccine manufacturers. The agency has indicated that these new restrictions on broader vaccine access will be implemented unless the pharmaceutical companies decide to fund and conduct extensive new placebo-controlled clinical trials. These trials would need to convincingly demonstrate a significant benefit for a wider population beyond those over 65 or at high risk. This places the onus on manufacturers to provide robust new evidence if they wish for their updated vaccines to be recommended for a larger segment of the public, ensuring decisions are backed by fresh data. However, this new direction is not without its critics and concerns. Dr. Richard Besser, former acting director of the CDC, has voiced apprehension. He pointed out that these restrictions could create unintentional barriers for individuals who may wish to get vaccinated to protect vulnerable family members, even if they themselves are not in a high-risk category. For instance, a younger person living with an elderly parent or an immunocompromised relative might seek vaccination as an added layer of protection for their loved ones. The new rule might make this more complicated or less encouraged. Furthermore, Dr. Besser also raised a procedural point, noting that the FDA's decision to define eligible groups for vaccination somewhat encroaches on what has traditionally been the role of the CDC and its advisory committees. Typically, the FDA evaluates the safety and efficacy of vaccines for specific uses, while the CDC provides recommendations on how those vaccines should be used within the population. This shift could signal a change in how these responsibilities are delineated or coordinated between the two key public health agencies, potentially leading to confusion or overlap in guidance for the public and healthcare providers. The United States is not alone in re-evaluating its COVID-19 vaccine strategy. Several other developed nations have already adopted similar, more targeted approaches. Countries such as the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia have also shifted their recommendations to focus primarily on older adults, individuals with underlying health conditions, and sometimes healthcare workers. This international trend suggests a broader consensus is emerging among public health authorities that as the pandemic evolves, vaccination efforts should be concentrated on those most likely to suffer severe consequences from the virus. This global alignment provides some context for the FDA's new direction. One of the practical challenges related to the FDA's call for new extensive clinical trials is the timeline involved. Such trials are complex and can take a significant amount of time to design, conduct, and analyze. Experts have cautioned that these lengthy trial processes could, paradoxically, result in vaccines being less effective against newly emerging variants of the virus. The COVID-19 virus mutates rapidly, and a vaccine formulation tested extensively over many months might be targeting strains that are no longer dominant by the time the trial concludes and the vaccine is approved for broader use, potentially making the data less relevant. In response to the FDA's evolving guidance, major pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer and Moderna, key developers of mRNA COVID-19 vaccines, have acknowledged the agency's position. They have expressed their commitment to collaborating with the FDA and continuing to assess the performance of their vaccines. These companies will need to weigh the costs and benefits of conducting large-scale placebo-controlled trials for broader population use against focusing on providing updated vaccines for the prioritized high-risk groups. Their decisions will significantly shape the future availability and recommendations for these vaccines. In summary, the FDA's plan to restrict future COVID-19 shots, primarily to individuals over 65 or those with high-risk medical conditions, unless new trials demonstrate broader benefit, marks a significant policy evolution. This change aligns with moves in other countries and is supported by some experts who question the need for annual boosters for all healthy individuals. However, it also raises concerns about access for those wishing to protect vulnerable contacts and the traditional roles of public health agencies. Ultimately, this reflects a transition towards managing COVID-19 in a more targeted and sustainable way, focusing protection where it is most critically needed as we move further from the acute phase of the pandemic. Thanks for stopping by today, Hot Reels. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give it a like. Your support helps us bring you more amazing content. Please stay connected with us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, Pinterest, and Threads for the latest updates and trending reels. Subscribe now and be part of the fun.